Got a Lost 45 lined up for you. The highest debuting record on the fantasy playlist, August 29th, 1987. Welcome back to the countdown with Dean Kirk. There were a grand total of 8. Well, let's see. Did I do this right? Maybe it's more like this. That's 4. And that's 4 right there. At least I can count. There's 8 debut records on this fantasy playlist. The highest debut record, one of Bryan Adams' lesser hits. Ironically enough, debuting at number 18, Victim of Love by Bryan Adams. The album is called Into the Fire. I believe it was his 4th or 5th album. Came out in 1987. And when I listened to this record on YouTube, hadn't heard the song in years, I have to listen to some of these songs to refresh my memory. This sounds more like one of those power ballads by a hair metal band, a band like Poison or Bon Jovi or Def Leppard. Just got that vibe to it, that hair metal, that heavy metal vibe to the record. But I like the part, though. One thing that stuck out, I do remember. One thing that stuck out at me about this record was he had that slow part. He just the guitars and everything just quiet down. It was just him singing with supported by those tasty keyboards in the background. I love those keyboards in that record. Victim of Love by Bryan Adams. Well, here's the deal about Bryan Adams. He was the son of a diplomat. His father worked in the Foreign Service. He's from Canada, but he's lived all over the world. And he was kind of aimless, though. Didn't really have any, didn't really have any career interest per se when he was young. But he got into music, and he locked the door to his bedroom, listened to records for hours, learned how to play the guitar. And about a year, he left high school when he was 16 years old. About a year later, he was a lead singer of a rock and roll band in Vancouver, Canada. Later on, he teamed up with Jim Falance, his songwriting sidekick, Jim Falance, and also teamed up with a producer. Well, actually, he's more of an engineer. I don't really understand what a record engineer is. I don't know the technical part of it, but I'll just say he's probably more of a mixer than he is a producer for the most part. Bob Clearmountain, who produced these big albums for Bryan Adams. Now, Bob Clearmountain, he mixed out. Oh, God, this guy's big behind the scenes. You probably never heard of him, but this guy, he mixed. Didn't produce, but he mixed. Born in the USA by Springsteen, Tattoo You by Rolling Stones, and Let's Dance by David Bowie. He's worked with Hall & Oates, Pretenders, Simple Minds, and Amy Mann's first album. He was working on her first album and very proud of it too. She had that record, I Should Have Known. Amy Mann of Till Tuesday. I remember she had that song out back in 1993. I was thrilled when I discovered that. But let's get back to Bryan Adams. Now the album. Now he released his first album in 1980. About a year or two later, another album came out. And then in 1982, maybe late 82, but in 83, Cuts Like a Knife. Boom! That put him right straight on the map. Put a pin right there on the wall. Right there on the checkerboard. Bryan Adams, Cuts Like a Knife. Straight from the Heart was actually the first big record for him. And then Cuts Like a Knife, this time all in 1983. Run to You was a big one for him back in the fall of 1984. 1985 was a high watermark. Hit his high watermark for Bryan Adams. Came out with Somebody, that sonic supernova guitar just flowing right along. Boy, he was knocking it out on that record. Started out with Somebody in late 84. Well, actually early 85. Then came Heaven. When it, gosh, huge record, Heaven. Spring, summer 1985, summer 69. One Night Love Affair, all in 1985. But the killer record, one killer record, I remember watching this video so vividly on Night Tracks. It was he did that fiery or however you pronounce it. Duet with Tina Turner, It's Only Love. I remember watching that video back in the day on Night Tracks WTBS, the winter of 1985 and 86. Boy, they were all over that one, although that wasn't one of his biggest hits. So now we come to his album, Into the Fire, co-written. He co-wrote this album, by the way, with Jim Falance. The album was recorded at Bryan Adams' house. He had his own recording studio, but his backing band did, they put their instruments in separate parts of his house. Like there'll be an instrument in the bathroom, there'll be another instrument in the kitchen, and then there'll be another one in the living room or bedroom or whatever. And they called his house was known as Cliffhanger because he lived close to the sea. He lived close to the sea, Bryan Adams did. The album was recorded. August, September of 1986, and through most of October 1986. The album was finished, or the recording part at least, was finished on October 24th, 1986. And Into the Fire, the name of the album. Jim Valance and Bryan Adams, they listened to the album. There were two songs they were satisfied with. Heat of the Night, which was the first single off the album, and that went to number, well, I thought I had the chart position on that record right there. Oh, Heat of the Night went to number 6 in the States, went to number 6 here. Hearts on Fire went to number 26. Victim of Love, well, I'll go into the chart position of that in just a minute. And so they picked out Heat of the Night and Victim of Love. They thought that Jim Valance and Bryan Adams thought that these would be the two singles off the album. Boy, it just brings back a lot of memories. See, the thing about it is, Heat of the Night and Victim of Love, you don't hear those songs with the same frequency as you do, say, like Run to You and Heaven. And they're basically Lost 45s now. So it's really nice to bring back one of these Lost 45s by Bryan Adams from that album, Into the Fire. The album was a commercial success. Was not as successful as Reckless, the album before that. It went to number 7 on Billboard's Top 200 album charts. That's not bad. But a lot of the rock and roll critics, a lot of people said this album's a flop. Even though it had some great songs, had some great rock and roll records on there. It's still Bryan Adams. The chemistry is still there. Chemistry between him, Bob Clearmountain, and Jim Valance still in place. But the album Into the Fire sold only 2 million copies. Reckless sold 20 million copies. But just because an album you got to understand the mentality in the record business. It's hard to top a huge album. A superstar huge album, it's hard to top it. 2 million is not a shabby number. I'm sure a lot of artists out there would like to sell 2 million albums. But when you're up there in the stratosphere with, like Bryan Adams was in the early to mid 80s, going into the late 80s, the bar gets set unrealistic, becomes unrealistic. The bar gets set too high. So that's a shame. But Bryan Adams would come back. Oh, he roared right back into life back in 1991, Waking Up the Neighbors and Everything I Do for You, his biggest hit. Number 1 across the world. And then the song after that, Oh, Can't Stop This Thing, we started. That was in late 91, early 92, I believe. And well, I can't read my chicken scratch, so I'll just go ahead and just end the video. Victim of Love went to number 32 on Billboard's Hot 100. That's it. But it did better on my fantasy playlist, though. A healthy debut at number 18. Bryan Adams with Victim of Love on this fantasy playlist of August 29th, 1987.